Hi guys. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Today's video is going to be another new book, and it is Aesop's Fables. I remember reading these in English class and having to dissect the story and discuss the meaning behind the story and the lesson behind it, which I think is always very important. And I haven't actually read this book in a few years, so I'm excited to open this up and start reading it. So without further ado, let's light our candle and drink some water and get started. And if you do like this video, I invite you to please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. It would help me out so much. And the candle that I am lighting is called Do Nothing and Chill from Posh Candle Company. It smells like vanilla and caramelized sugar. So it's a very sweet smelling candle. And let's read this little introduction here. Aesop, according to legend, was born either in Sardis on the Greek island of Samos, or in Coetium, the chief city in a province of Phrygia, and lived from about 620 to 560 BC. Little is known about his life, but Aristotle mentioned his acting as a public defender, and Plutarch mentioned him or numbered him as one of the 7 wise men. It is generally believed he was a slave, freed by his master because of his wit and wisdom. As a free man, he went to Athens, ruled at that time by the tyrant Pisistratus. Sorry, I'm butchering all of these words and names. An enemy of free speech. As Aesop became famous for his fables, which used animals as a code to tell the truth about political injustice, he incurred the wrath of Pisistratus. Eventually, Aesop was condemned to death for sacrilege and thrown over a cliff. Later, the Athenians erected a statue in his honor. In about 300 BC, Demetrius Valerius of Athens made the first known collection of Aesop's fables, which then spread far beyond the Greek world. The Fox and the Grapes. A famished fox crept into a vineyard where ripe, luscious grapes were draped high upon arbors in a most tempting display. In his effort to win a juicy prize, the fox jumped and sprang many times, but failed in all his attempts. When he finally had to admit defeat, he retreated and muttered to himself, "Well, what does it matter anyway? The grapes are sour." It is easy to despise what you cannot get. The Wolf and the Crane. A wolf devoured his prey so ravenously that a bone got stuck in his throat, and in extreme agony he ran and howled through the forest, beseeching every animal he met to pull out the bone. He even offered a generous reward to anyone who succeeded in pulling it out. Moved by his pleas, as well as the prospect of the money, a crane ventured her long neck down into the wolf's throat and drew out the bone. She then modestly asked for the promised reward, but the wolf just grinned and bared his teeth. "Ungrateful creature," he replied with seeming indignation. "How dare you ask for any other reward than your life? After all, you're among the very few who can say that you've put your head into the jaws of a wolf and were permitted to draw it out in safety. Expect no reward when you serve the wicked, and be thankful if you escape injury for your pains." The Archer and the Lion. An archer, known for his skill with bow and arrow, went to the mountains in search of game. When he entered the wilderness, all the beasts of the forest became terrified and took flight. Only the lion challenged him to combat, whereupon the archer immediately launched an arrow and cried out, "My messenger has something to say to you." The lion was wounded in the side, and smarting with pain, he fled deep into the thickets. When a fox saw him running away, however, he encouraged him to turn and face his enemy. "No," said the lion, "there's no way you can persuade me to fight. Just think, if a mere messenger can do as much damage as he's already done, how shall I withstand the attack of the man who sent him?" It is not a very pleasant feeling to have a neighbor who can easily strike from a distance. The Woman and the Fat Hen. A woman owned a hen that laid an egg every morning. Since the hen's eggs were of excellent quality, they sold for a good price. So, at one point, the woman thought to herself, "If I double my hen's allowance of barley, she'll lay twice a day." Therefore, she put her plan to work, and the hen became so fat and contented that it stopped laying altogether. Relying on statistics does not always produce results. The Kid and the Wolf. Standing securely on a high rock, a kid noticed a wolf passing below and began to taunt him and shower him with abuse. The wolf merely stopped to reply, "Coward, don't think that you can annoy me. As far as I'm concerned, it's not you who's taunting me, but the place on which you're standing." The Hawk and the Pigeons. Some pigeons have long lived in fear of a hawk, but since they had always kept on the alert and stayed near the dovecote, they had consistently managed to escape their enemy's attacks. Finding his allies unsuccessful, the hawk now sought to use cunning to trick the pigeons. "Why," he once asked, "do you prefer this life of constant anxiety when I could keep you safe from any conceivable attack by the kites and falcons? All you have to do is make me your king, and I won't bother you anymore." Trusting his claims, the pigeons elected him to their throne, but no sooner was he installed than he began exercising his royal prerogative by devouring a pigeon a day. It serves us right, the one poor pigeon whose turn was yet to come. Some remedies are worse than the disease itself. The Eagle and the Fox. An eagle and a fox had lived together for a long time and as good neighbors. The eagle's nest was on top of a high tree. the fox's lair at the foot of it. One day, however, while the fox was away, the eagle could not find any food for her young ones. So she swooped down and carried off one of the fox's cubs to her nest, thinking that her lofty dwelling would protect her from the fox's revenge. She was about to divide the cub among her brood when the fox returned home and pleaded fervently for the return of her young cub. Since her entreaties were in vain, she ran to an altar in a neighboring field and snatched a torch from the fire that had been lit to sacrifice a goat. Then she returned to the tree and set it on fire. The flames and smoke soon caused the eagle to worry about her young ones and her own life as well, and she returned the cub safe and sound to his mother. The tyrant is never safe from those whom he oppresses. The Boy and the Scorpion. A boy was hunting locusts on a wall and had already caught a great number of them when he spied a scorpion and mistook it for another locust. Just as he was cupping his hand to catch it, the scorpion lifted up its sting and said, "Just you try, and you'll not only lose me, but all your locusts in the bargain." The Fox and the Goat. A fox had fallen into a well and could not find any means to escape. Eventually, a thirsty goat appeared, and upon noticing the fox, he asked him whether the water was good and plentiful. Pretending that his situation was not precarious, the fox replied, "Come down, my friend. The water is so good that I can't drink enough of it. Besides, there's such an abundant supply that it can't be exhausted." When he heard this, the goat did not waste any time and promptly leapt down into the well. After he quenched his thirst, the fox informed him of their predicament and suggested a scheme for their common escape. "If you will place your forefeet upon the wall and bend your head, I'll run up your back and escape. Then I'll help you out." The goat readily agreed to this proposal, and the fox took advantage of his friend's back and horns and nimbly propelled himself out of the well. Following his escape, he made off as fast as he could, while the goat yelled and reproached him for breaking their bargain. But the fox turned around and coolly remarked to the poor deluded goat, "If you had half as much brains as you have beard, you would never have gone down the wall before making sure there was a way up. I'm sorry that I can't stay with you any longer, but I have some business that needs my attention." Look before you leap. The Old Hound. An old hound had served his master extremely well in the field, but had lost his strength over the years and now had many troubles. One day, while out hunting with his master, he encountered a wild boar and boldly seized the beast by the ear, but his teeth gave way and the boar escaped. His master rushed to the scene and began giving the hound a good scolding and sound beating. But he stopped when the feeble dog looked up and said, "Spare your old servant, dear master. You know full well that neither my courage nor my will were at fault, but only my strength and my teeth, and these I have lost in your service." The Ants and the Grasshopper. On a cold, frosty day, the ants began dragging out some of the grain they had stored during the summer and began drying it. A grasshopper, half dead with hunger, came by and asked the ants for a morsel to save his life. "What did you do this past summer?" responded the ants. "Oh," said the grasshopper, "I kept myself busy by singing all day and all night too." "Well then," remarked the ants as they laughed and shut their storehouse, "since you kept yourself busy by singing all summer, you can do the same by dancing all winter. Idleness brings want." The Fawn and Her Mother. One day, a fawn said to her mother, "You're larger than a dog and swifter. You also have great endurance and horns to defend yourself. Why is it then, mother, that you're so afraid of the hounds?" She smiled and said, "I know all this full well, my child, but no sooner do I hear a dog bark than I feel faint and take off as fast as my heels can carry me." No argument, no matter how convincing, will give courage to a coward. The Horse and the Groom. A dishonest groom used to steal and sell a horse's oats and grain on a regular basis. He would, however, spend hours busily grooming and rubbing him down to make him appear in good condition. Naturally, the horse resented this treatment and said, "If you really want me to look well, groom me less and feed me more." The Mountain in Labor. Many years ago, a mighty rumbling was heard from a mountain which was said to be in labor. Thousands of people flocked from far and near to see what it would produce. After a long time of waiting and anxious expectation, out popped a mouse. A magnificent and promising beginning often ends in a paltry performance. The Flies in the Honey Jar. After a jar of honey was knocked over in a kitchen, the flies were attracted by its sweet smell and began eating the honey. Indeed, they swarmed all over it and did not budge from the spot until they had devoured every drop. However, their feet had become so clogged that they could not fly away, no matter how much they tried. Stymied by their own voracious appetites, they cried out, "What foolish creatures we are! We've thrown away our lives just for the sake of a little pleasure." The pitter-pattering of feet is my dog, for anybody who hasn't encountered that in my other videos. The Two Bags. According to ancient lore, every man is born into the world with two bags suspended from his neck, one in front and one behind, and both are full of faults. But the one in front is full of his neighbor's faults, the one behind full of his own. Consequently, men are blind by their own faults, but never lose sight of their neighbors. The Vain Crow. A crow, as vain and conceited as only a crow can be, picked up the feathers that some peacocks had shed and stuck them among his own. Then he scoffed at his old companions and joined a flock of beautiful peacocks. After introducing himself with great self-confidence, the crow was immediately recognized for the intruder he was, and the peacocks stripped him of his borrowed plumes. Moreover, they battered him with their beaks and sent him about his business. The unlucky crow, sorely punished and deeply regretful, rejoined his former companions and wanted to mix with them again as if nothing had happened. But they recalled the airs that he had assumed and drove him from their flock. At the same time, one of the crows, whom he had recently snubbed, gave him this short lecture. Had you been satisfied with your own feathers, you would have escaped the punishment of your betters, and also the contempt of your equals. The Wolf and the Lamb. While lapping water at the head of a running brook, A wolf noticed a stray lamb some distance from the stream. Once he made up his mind to attack her, he began thinking of a plausible excuse for making her his prey. "Scoundrel," he cried, running up to her. "How dare you muddle the water that I am drinking?" "Please forgive me," replied the lamb meekly, "but I don't see how I could have done anything to the water since it runs from you to me, not from me to you." "Be that as it may," the wolf retorted, "but you know it was only a year ago that you called me many bad names behind my back." "Oh, sir," said the lamb, "I wasn't even born a year ago." "Well," the wolf asserted, "if it wasn't you, it was your mother, and that's all the same to me. Anyway, it's no use trying to argue me out of my supper." And without another word, he fell upon the poor helpless lamb and tore her to pieces. A tyrant will always find a pretext for his tyranny, so it is useless for the innocent to seek justice through reasoning when the oppressor intends to be unjust. The Bear and the Fox. A bear used to boast of his excessive love for humankind, saying that he had never touched or mauled a human corpse. The fox observed with a smile, "I would be more impressed by your kindness if you never ate a human being alive." We should not wait until a person dies before showing our respect. The Dog, the Cock, and the Fox. A dog and a cock set out on their travels together, and by nightfall they found themselves in a forest. So the cock flew up into a tree and perched himself on a high branch, while the dog dozed below at the foot. When the day finally dawned, the cock, as usual, crowed very loudly and drew the attention of a fox, who thought he would make a meal out of him. So he approached the tree and spoke to the cock from beneath the branches. "You're such a good little bird and most useful to your fellow creatures. So why don't you come down and we can sing our matins and rejoice together?" "Go to the foot of the tree, my good friend," replied the cock, "and tell my sacristan to toll the bell." But when the fox approached the foot of the tree, the dog promptly jumped up and made a quick end of him. He who lays traps for others is often caught by his own snare. The Cock and the Jewel. A cock was scratching the ground in a farmyard in search of food for himself and his hens, when he happened to turn up a jewel. Feeling quite sure that it was something precious, but not knowing exactly what to do with it, he remarked, "You're undoubtedly a very fine thing for those who appreciate your worth, but I'd rather have 1 grain of delicious barley than all the jewels in the world." The value of an object is in the eyes of the beholder. The Seagull and the Hawk. A seagull, who was more at home swimming on the sea than walking on land, liked to catch live fish for its food. One day, the gull pounced upon a fish, and as he tried to swallow it, he choked, burst a bullet, and lay down on the shore to die. A hawk, who was passing by and saw him, thought he was a land bird like himself. Consequently, he offered him no other comfort than, "It serves you right. What business is it of birds of the air to seek food from the sea?" The Fox and the Lion. A fox had never seen a lion before, and when he finally encountered one for the first time, he was so terrified that he almost died of fright. When he met him the second time, he was still afraid, but managed to conceal his fear. When he saw him the third time, he was so emboldened that he went up to him and began having a familiar conversation with him. Familiarity breeds contempt. The creaking wheels. As some oxen were pulling a wagon along a bumpy road, the wheels began to creak and make a tremendous noise, whereupon the driver called to the wagon, "Brute, why do you groan when these creatures who are doing all the work are silent?" Those who cry the loudest are not always the ones who are hurt the most. The frog and the ox. An ox was grazing in a swampy meadow when he accidentally set his foot down on top of a bunch of young frogs and crushed nearly all of them to death. One that managed to escape ran off to tell his mother the dreadful news. "Mother," he said, "it was a beast, a big, four-footed beast that did it." The mother, who was a vain old thing, thought she could easily make herself as large. "How big? Was it as big as this?" she asked, and puffed herself as much as she could. "Oh," said the little one, "a great deal bigger than that." "Well, was it this big?" she cried, puffing and blowing again with all her might. "It certainly was, Mother," he replied, "and I'm afraid you'd probably burst before you could reach even half its size." Provoked by such a disparagement of her powers, the silly old frog made one more try before she did indeed succeed in bursting herself into thin air. Not all creatures can become as great as they think. That is where I'm going to leave off of these stories. Let me know if you liked these. I know it's a little bit of a change from what I usually do on my channel, but I just wanted to read something that was a little bit different, so let me know if you liked it. I hope that this relaxed you and made you ready for a beautiful night's sleep. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. It would mean so much to me. I hope you have pleasant dreams. Good night.